I'm the new superintendent here. I think Rob likes my countdown, so I think I'm on day 15 or 16 actually in office. So I won't claim to be a know-it-all, but I have learned a lot and I'm pretty up to speed on the project. So we're going to go through this whole project, and we want you to ask questions. We want you to feel comfortable, and want to talk a little bit about myself as a leader. I'm excited to be here, and I stand for high expectations and accountability, transparency. We have a great admin team assembled back there, and they're going to do gotta suck up a little bit, right? But they're going to do a great job, and they're going to have high expectations for our students and our teachers, and they're going to lead by example, and it's going to be a good thing. And I'm excited for this school year. It's going to be a great year, and also excited for this project. So we'll walk you through it, and we'll, like I said, ask questions along the way. We want you to get your questions answered, and we're first going to kind of give you a little bit of a history of the district, and who better to talk about the district than someone that's been on the school board for 20 plus years, that's lived here, I think his whole life, than Dr. Ron Pagel. So he's going to walk you through a little bit of that.
I'm not a doctor. Let's get that clear right away. So, our district. A lot of you have lived here. Some of you went to school same time that I did, graduated together. Wes, you weren't part of that. About 1,100, 1,200 students. I think we're pretty proud of the things we do at Dover Yoda. Try to be on the cutting edge of a lot of new initiatives and try to stay ahead of the curve. Again, pretty proud of what we've had a history. But we got some things we want to address. This is a video we put together.
I grew up in this district, and it had always been my lifelong dream to be back here. Dover Yoda is my school.
It's pretty unique to see the close-knit communities that we have here and the relationships that staff have with kids.
In a town our size, the school is kind of the focal point.
They asked all the staff members, they asked all the administration, what do you need to make your district better? Deferred maintenance, heating and cooling in that 1960s part, and addressing the CTE part.
On August 9th, Dover Yoda Public Schools will ask community members to vote on 2 ballot questions: to repair our school buildings and systems, improve safety and security, and update learning spaces.
We need to update our 1960s part of the building. We should have a building that we're proud of, and we want our classrooms to be welcoming and aesthetically pleasing.
I saw some things in the high school in particular that were there when I graduated 15 years ago this spring.
There's a lot of leaks in the roof.
We have the old Venmar units in the classrooms, and that's kind of an antiquated heating and ventilation system.
You can never prepare what to wear for the day because you'll start out in one classroom that's like 80 degrees and you're boiling, and then the next classroom you go to it's like 60 and you need like 2 coats.
If you take the Venmars out, there's asbestos 9-inch tiles under each one. So if they're gone, you have to get rid of the carpet and the 9-inch tile. That's a big project.
So there are things that need to be fixed.
It's distracting. It's hard for them to focus when they're either too hot or too cold. Safety is huge.
In the entrance to the high school, we're going to have it so we can secure the entrance during the school day, and then we'll also serve as a mezzanine for our air handling units. I think you always want more space, but I also think that in this instance you are not asking for a whole lot of extra space.
In this room, the chair setup right now is for approximately 87, and the room is not designed for this many students in band. Neither is our storage. There are cases everywhere.
Next year will be my 10 years, and I have never had my own classroom. I actually do have a cart. It's for about 130 to 150 kids. And then next year, I'm actually doing 7th grade and 8th grade health, so it'll be 200 kids instead of just 100 kids.
Our next need in our district is for the CTE, industrial tech, ag.
Having 30 kids in a classroom is really difficult when I only have 5 work tables for them.
We toured some neighboring districts, and they've got kids that are leaving school with enough skills they can go out and get a job. That's what the community is looking for, is people to go to work. Not everybody's going to go to college.
This is an ag community. There's a lot of trade jobs specifically in this area of Minnesota.
If both question 1 and question 2 are approved, The tax impact on a $245,000 home would be $9.08 per month. The Ag to School tax credit increases to 70% in 2023, providing additional relief to agricultural landowners.
Over the years, the district has not really asked for the grandeur. They have asked for what really works in our district.
We've already been kind of making it work through patching this and patching that, but it's at a time now that it's not going to be cost effective, and the learning environment will only become more challenging for our students. It's really important that our community supports schools because the kids are our future. We need to have a safe learning environment for all of our kids where they can feel comfortable, welcome, and making sure we're making the learning environment safe for them.
Please learn all that you can about the upcoming referendum. And don't forget to vote on or before Tuesday, August 9th.
So that video, hopefully it's not the first time you've seen it. It's on the school website. Share it with whoever you want. It talks a little bit about what we're trying to do. So let's talk about our buildings. You know, some of the issues we're having. Leaks, right there. You know, this building used to have separate air units on the roof. They've taken them off, patched them. When you patch it, you get leaks. Up here, water quality. We got a home ec room that we have to bring bottled water in to cook with because the water is not potable out of the faucets. Security, Jeremy's going to talk more about the front entry and how we can secure that. Our C-Tech area, our shops. Some of that equipment's been updated. Those are new shields. They were not in place when I went to school here. You'll see a green shear. I can remember when we got that new, and that's been a couple years ago. And it's sheared a lot of metal. Again, as I talked in the video, we talked to people in the businesses, you know, the BNCs, the Higgins Cabinetry, around the community. They want people to come out, know which end of a hammer to pick up, how to run a screwdriver, and then go to work. And some of these people can go to work and make a really good living, no kidding, and be very successful. We want to take it to the next step where we can offer some additional classes, partner with some area business, and Jeremy's going to address that as we go a little further. So how did we get to this point? So back in 2019, the board was having discussions about, you know, we need to do better. People come to our school, they walk in our gyms, they walk in our front entry and go, you got a pretty nice school. And if you never go past that hallway and walk to the rest of the school, you'll never see the other side of the story. And, you know, we've got ceiling tiles upstairs that were the same ceiling tiles that I threw pencils in. The pencils have been removed, but the holes are still there. We got lighting systems that need to be upgraded. So we as a board started talking about what we could do to upgrade some of these. So we have the long-term maintenance facility funds that we can levy against taxpayers and use for projects. One of the issues is we started, well, what do we do first? The ceilings, or we do the flooring? Well, if we do the flooring, we're gonna rip up the carpet, we got asbestos tile, and we gotta abate the tile. Okay, we can do that, but then we got that air handler that's making all the noise that's outdated and we can't get parts for. Well, it's more we got funds for to do on a one-to-one project. So the board actually sat back and said, wait a minute, let's put these together and do these as one project. Let's fix the floors, let's fix the heating and cooling, let's fix the ceiling and the lighting and give it a whole new facelift and do it as one project rather than try to do it kind of piecemeal. So, so back in September, we started a strategic plan looking at, we haven't done a strategic plan in the district for a long time. COVID didn't help that either. Just where we were headed as a district. We actually employed Nexus to help us do that strategic plan, involve community members, staff members, and kind of what the priorities were and where we're heading as a district. We also, with the employment of Nexus, they did a facilities assessment. They talked with staff. What do you need to make your classrooms better? Well, you know, some wanted heating, some wanted cooling. So it's how to be comfortable. We talked about the safety issue. We don't have to go too far to turn on the TV and hear about how unsafe schools are and issues having. You know, Jeremy's going to talk a little bit about that here in a bit. So these are things that were all identified as to what we need, what we did. And there was a great laundry list. More that we could probably, obviously more that we could do in one fell sweep. We did community surveys. A mailer out to what do you feel are priorities? What are the areas you see is big needs of our district? And then part of that survey was also, what is your tax tolerance? What will you support as a community? You know, and they were given ranges of millions of dollars and how it would affect their taxes. And so that was part of the discussion. So then finally we had this facilities task force that Matt went through, looked at all the surveys, looked at all the data, and they brought forward a plan to the school board, and then we took it from there. So facility needs, what do they look like? We put them into 3 categories, you know, some deferred maintenance items. The 1960s version still has the original galvanized pipe. It has, you know, we have orange water in this part of the building. It's rusty. You know, I can remember my boys going to school, they loved the water because it tasted like the stuff at home. Nobody else wanted it because it didn't taste like the stuff they drank at home. And maybe that's why my kids are the way they are. But anyway, I digress. Security and safety, the front entryway. How are we going to get to do a better job with that? And then our learning spaces. Again, we talked about that wing of the building is, a lot of it's still the way it was designed back in the 60s. And we need to do a better job addressing the needs of all our students. Not all our students are going to be college bound. We got kids that, you know, don't want to go out and create debt and still work at a trade job. They can get some basic skills, go out, get further training within a union or something, and have a very successful career. So these are the areas that we're going to address. The building systems, look, you know, here's buckets hanging to collect leaks. So we're addressing a lot of the roofing issues on both buildings. There's the galvanized pipes. All the buildings, all the older part of the building will all be replaced with copper pipes. You've heard us talk about the heating and cooling for these Venmar units. These Venmar units were put in the project when we did the gyms 20 years ago. The old registers were kind of horizontal. They clanged and banged quite a bit. This was the latest and greatest version 20 years ago. They're worn out. They're loud. They take up space in the classroom. We've come up with better options. We can improve our heating and cooling and be more efficient at it. There's air handling units. There's ductworks. It just needs to be upgraded. Security, safety, Jeremy?
Yeah, one of the first things I noticed when I came here for interviews and touring the building was the entrance to the school. And it's about, so if you come here during a school day, like we'll say 2 o'clock, you're gonna find locked doors. And you're gonna see, is it the top one that's a little laser?
Yep.
Okay. On this administrative assistant's desk, there's a tiny little screen here that would connect out to that door, little door camera. And they have to use that to identify if it's a threat or not to let in the building. If you get buzzed into the building, you got about 23 Mr. Free paces to get to where you're supposed to check in.
It's about 60 in normal man.
Yeah, that's a long ways. So 23 of my paces is a long ways. But honestly, if you get buzzed in, you can go anywhere you want. Let's be honest. If you're here for bad intentions, you're going wherever you want to go quickly, and no one's going to stop you. So, you know, there was over 100 school shootings with injury or death since 2018. Over 20 in the last year, the last school year alone. Everyone watches the news. I think most people understand that. But school safety needs to be our #1 priority. Safety for our staff, safety for our students. That is not a safe entrance. That's not a modern way to conduct a school. So What we want to do is, if we're fortunate enough to get a yes vote, we want to make a secure entrance. And the plan is that we're going to get a committee together, and we're going to visit schools that have a modern entrance, and we're going to study who's doing it well, what don't you like, what do you like, and learn what is the very best thing that we can do for our school district. So that's definitely a plan. Part of the safety and security is we have a need to update our camera system. We have a lot of blind spots in the building, and cameras are a fantastic deterrent and a great way to hold people accountable. And it's needed for a modern school to have a really good camera system. So we would upgrade that, but that front entrance needs to be fixed. It needs to be secure to provide that safe school. This is an area I'm really passionate about. The school I came from, Minneota, Minnesota, I got to run with a new initiative as a principal. We partnered with Minnesota West, and we got all new welding equipment, and we partnered with the local technical college, and there are 9 kids in Minneota that this fall are going to have 3 hours a day of welding as seniors. And the welding instructor is going to come to them, and they're going to spend 3 hours a day in a brand new welding shop. Brand new welding equipment was purchased. I got to be part of that. And at the end of the day, when they walk across the graduation stage, they're going to have 16 credits, college credits in welding. And they will have that first level of certification for welding. That would enable them, if they choose, to go and get a job right out of high school. And in southwestern Minnesota, the Windham area, Worthington area, we were pretty much guaranteed they're going to get a welding job for 50 to 70 grand in that region of the state where they are right now. What a fantastic thing, and it was free of charge for the kids. So we're offering all these college credits, right? We're pushing the free college credits. We should be doing justice to the trades. And whether or not this district chooses to go with welding, do we offer a CDL program here? I've seen that done in schools. We'd have to identify where, but the expansion of the CTE is not just a bigger wood shop, so we can make bigger, better birdhouses. That's not what that is. This is going to be partnering with industry, partnering with higher education to get kids training that they need. It's sorely needed here. We're probably behind, as Ron said. And so that's something I'm really passionate about. We have a fantastic band that they've outgrown their room, and you've probably seen the video, but I think they're 20 over capacity for their room. A band that's won Grammy Awards and does a fantastic job, and it's not safety compliant. We'd want to take care of that as well. So the safety and security, a big piece of this, really important, and hopefully we can take care of those things.
So why now? Why are we coming to a vote right now? A lot of you know what our economy is doing. Construction costs are up. So again, this discussion started at the board back in 19. Unfortunately, it's something called COVID kind of got us off track for a little bit. There's 2 reasons we're coming to you now. 1, the need is there, and 2, is it the right timing? I'm going to address 2 things with this. So we talk about construction costs and inflation and everything else. We're seeing costs go up. We've seen them go up. We actually, some of the materials are actually dropping off a little bit. Those costs rarely go back to where they ever were. Kind of the timeline of this project is an August vote. We would do design and engineering and stuff, probably go for bids first part of 2023, which is a great time to bid, and we would probably get these things as cheap as we're ever going to get looking into the near future. So we could get those prices locked in for what the construction is going to cost. We're going to talk a little bit about Jeff Seeley is our financial advisor that we work with. So we got some existing debt on the building project we did 20 years ago, the gym and the upgrading some of the heating and ventilating in this part of the building. That debt actually went off in 2022. So the taxpayers will see a decrease in their levy. Well, they would have in 2022. We actually, we did a tax abatement to redo our parking lots. That basically kept that tax level up there. It dropped off a little bit, but it dropped off a little bit, but it's kind of a placeholder almost to give the voters a chance that we want to vote on here. One of the things when you do a referendum, if you have a referendum and you pay it off, and the taxpayers get that money back that they aren't paying on their property, it's a really struggle to get back what you had. So the idea was that if we can get this project designed, and Jeff's gonna talk about how it's gonna flow financially, it's not gonna be a big tax burden, and we're gonna get some of our needs taken care of. So that's why we're here for a vote now, and that would try to keep the taxes on our local property owners at a fairly stable level. Rob?
Thanks, Ron. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rob Brown. I work with Nexus Solutions. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the facility solutions as far as all the conversations we've had and ultimately where we're at. There are 2 questions on the ballot, and a common question from the community that I've been getting and the district's been getting is, why are there 2 questions? And as Ron had mentioned, there was a community survey that went out to every mailbox in the school district. We received those responses. And what the community survey, what that feedback said was, here are the things that we believe are priorities. The leaky roofs, building security, the indoor air quality, the water quality, the CT space, the things that we've been talking about and we'll talk more about in a second. But they also said from a tax tolerance perspective, or the limit of which they're willing to participate financially, was right under about $18 million. And so when we went to the facility task force and said, here's all the project information, here's the survey results, and certainly there were a couple teachers and some parents, but there were a lot of additional folks that participated in that facility task force. So we had a nice representative group that made up that task force. And so what the task force suggested is, gosh, we have a lot of priority needs based on what the survey has said, and we agree these are priorities that we have to address in both buildings, but they exceed $18 million, so how do we pick and choose? And so where the facility task force got was, let's honor the limit that the public has told us. So let's keep that first question under $18 million, but let's provide a choice to the public if they choose to support question 2 with a lot of the work that's at the elementary. Then it's up to them to decide if those priorities are also important enough where they're willing to spend additional dollars above that $18 million. So that's why there are 2 questions, again, to honor what the public had said that they were willing to support. So here's the main floor of the high school, and you'll see that there's a lot of gray. The gray is essentially portions of the building that haven't been touched in decades, and so we're looking to freshen them up so the taxpayers see the benefit to the work that we're fortunate enough to pass. Starting in this upper corner, this is the safe and secure entry that Jeremy was talking about. And so today, there's that little camera that's sort of over here, if you will, on the side. People buzz, and then they have the opportunity to go wherever they want once they come in. In this concept, and please let me stress, this is concept, no design has been done. We are far enough along where, talking to the board, the administration, the students, staff, and the public, these are the things that they wish to have happen, and the priorities that they want are shown. And so we have enough information to create budgets to go to referendum. Again, if we're fortunate enough to pass, then we'll get into design, we'll have the public participate, we'll have teachers and staff who actually live in the space and students participate, so that ultimately we have, if you will, the granularity on everything that will go into the space, so that we're most effective with the taxpayer dollar. And so again, here's that safe and secure entry. People then would, instead of coming in, they would come in through this door, they would check in, provide their driver's license, have that scanned, state their business, who they were there to see, then get a printed name badge, so instead of people writing their own names, as it is today, then they would be allowed into the building. If for some reason something happens that individual is not allowed into the building, there'll be a panic button so that this whole space will lock down. And again, we'll get into design as far as how elaborate that needs to be, but that's generally the idea. And so we've talked a lot about career tech ed. We've talked about helping our students with their futures. This is a career counseling center. And so that space will be available to help our students work with staff, work with our counselors, to help them beyond high school, at least that planning. This is special education. And so today, special education uses disparate rooms throughout the school. Sort of, wherever we have room, let's put them. But that uses additional human resources, paraprofessionals, that really, if we didn't have to use that number, that many people, we might be able to more efficiently help our students. And so by combining most, not all, of special education in this space, we're able to be more efficient and help our students more in a combined space. Here's that band space that Jeremy talked about. Today, it's basically, I'll just do a laser. It's basically above this little laser line. And so it's going to be 50% bigger, or all in all, an additional third of what you see. We're going to be taking out offices, practice rooms, and acoustically, if we are able to remove the drop tile ceiling, we're able to gain an additional 3 feet. So musically, the space will be fuller. And so instead of recreating a whole additional new band room off as an addition somewhere, we're better utilizing the space so that we can actually help our 90-plus students do better music. And so because we're taking out the practice rooms and some of the storage, we're actually, we've recommended anyway, and talking with the community and administration staff, adding a little bit of additional space for 3 practice rooms and music storage. So that'll efficiently help this area. We continue to move over, and we see these 2 additional classrooms, this corridor, and some storage. I understand, and we now understand, that over the next few years, we'll be adding roughly 50 new homes, townhomes and single-family homes, which will bring additional students. And so we're going to need this additional space, not to mention how we teach our kids today is different than when we were all in high school. Back in the day, we had the industrial style way of educating where you sit down and the teacher talked at you. Today it's much more involved and teachers work on small projects together, so we need more space. So those are those 2 classrooms. And then here you see the career technical education space. This is the existing, this light, if you will, almond. And so in a future slide here, I'll show you exactly how this, conceptually how we're talking about breaking this out. But all of this space will be opened up, made efficient. We're adding additional space over here to provide not only additional space per topic, if you will, whether it's welding or woods or construction, but we're also looking at programmatically, how do we help our kids do more? For instance, as Jeremy said, maybe having a CDL opportunity for our students is something the school wants to do. We'll have this space. You'll see on the bottom here, this orange, the state of Minnesota adopted International Building Code 2019. And as such, the whole bottom third of the state requires a storm shelter. Do you guys remember the tornado in Plainfield not long ago? So this is going to be a tornado shelter that'll handle up to an F5 tornado, again, legally required by law. And as such, storm shelter, it also requires bathrooms. And so bathrooms will be put here. The benefit to having bathrooms here is that this whole wing today doesn't really have bathrooms other than what we see here. And so we'll have additional opportunity for our students to take care of nature down here. Also, we have a wonderful FACS, or Family and Consumer Science, offering in this district. And the teachers have been creative enough to not only teach our kids how to sew and how to cook, but they do something called a food truck. And I hope you've had an opportunity to take advantage of it because the spring rolls are fantastic. So they do the business side as well. And so by having the concession stand here, what the FACS group can do is prepare their food or whatever it is they want to sell, And then ultimately with the concession stand, have an opportunity to early on do marketing, but then also work in the transactions and see pricing wise what works, what doesn't, and a variety of other options that this teacher is able to help our students with. And so as a side benefit, we have the football, soccer field down here. Again, only as a side benefit. We're able to offer these bathrooms for use on those evenings where there are sporting events. We have this concession stand that'll be available for those evenings where we have sporting events. We have a little door that we put in here to lock, so during sporting events, people can use the facilities but not go into the building. Okay. Here is the second floor. So you recall that we have that new high school office, the safe and secure entry up here? And so because of that benefit, it's always more cost effective to build up than it is to build out. And so by putting this mechanical room, this penthouse on top of that office, we're able to cost effectively create a central system. You know, Ron talked about the rooftops and the age of those and how they had to be replaced. And anything that sits outside, like your car for instance, if it sits outside all the time, it tends to age quicker than if you have a garage. This central system then will be inside, and so its life expectancy becomes nearly 30% longer than that, or 40% longer than what something sitting outside might be. And additionally then, because everything's in here, we don't have to worry about adding unitary systems like we did originally, and then how the upgrade was done back in 2002, those individual in-the-room units that tend to be noisy, tend to wear out quicker. And so by having this central system, we're able to make each classroom very quiet, very comfortable, and make it much more cost-effective over the life of the district's ownership for those systems. All right, each bathroom, and I should have pointed this out downstairs, will be upgraded so that it's ADA compliant for those students that have special needs, many of which are not. And then over here, we see some additional classrooms. This is the second floor. And so with the second floor, we have our 6th grade, and again, this is just conceptually, when we get it, if we're fortunate enough for this to pass, we'll have a lot of conversation on really what makes sense. But the idea of having our 6th graders just come from the elementary school, and then come to the high school, and then have to commingle with 11th graders, 12th graders, whether it's through lunch or gym or art or whatever the case is. This gives those students an opportunity, those 6th grade students, to have their own house, so they can come to school, have their own environment, and be, frankly, more safe and allow that transition period to help them feel better about their experience. This second floor, these classrooms, they are part of question 2. Okay. All right, moving on. So here's a 3D vision of the concept. And so, clean lab. So whether it's CAD, if you want to program a 3D printer, a plasma cutter, you're able to work in a safe, clean space, and then look out into the work area and see your projects actually happen. And frankly, it's much more safe to be separated like that. We see ag, of course, wood shop, welding, manufacturing, construction lab, home building or other types of construction, tech ed classroom, which can be used for a variety of things, including the CDL opportunity Jeremy talked about, small engines. Here's this family and consumer science space. One additional thing that I'll share with you is that, certainly we've been talking about those students that you should never, as a student, feel obligated to that you have to go to a 4-year university. But that said, we have STEM students, science, technology, engineering, and math, who learn a lot of theory. They learn about physics, they learn about, some of the CAD stuff, whatever. The way this will be structured is it will give them an opportunity to take that theory and apply it. So in theory, if we do this, does it actually work? Whether that be through manufacturing or some of the other opportunities we have here. So it'll be much more than just the shop kids. It'll be applicable for many, many more of our students. And then again, these classrooms, the bottom 2, question 1, top 2, question 2. All right, investment. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Seeley. I'm with Ellers. I've worked with the district for many years as the financial advisor. And when they're looking at facility improvements, I help design or come up with options for financing. So one thing we want to talk about, because this is an ag community, 40% of your tax valuation or tax base is qualifying ag land, qualifying for the ag credit that went into place several years ago. So we want to talk a little bit about this ag credit. So it provides property owners of ag land a credit on the district's capital bond. So on the bond payments, what's happened is the district levies to collect the money in order to make the principal and interest payments on the bond for a period of many years, in this case 20 years. So what it does, right now it's currently going to be going up to 70% for your taxes payable in 23, which will be set this fall. Okay, it started off in 2017, it passed for pay 2018 at 40%. It stayed at 40% for several years. Then there was a change, it went to 50, 55, 60, and now it's going up to 70, which is where it will stay, as at least as far as the current law. Now, there was proposals to increase it to 85% last year, and then this year, and in fact, it had enough support that we actually thought it might go through, but then there was some conflict on what to do with surplus monies, and things kind of shut down at that point. So it did not go into effect. It will probably come again in the future. So it applies to all the new debt that's being proposed. It also applies to existing debt. So the debt that was previously issued, those levies that support the payment, it applies to that also. It applies to all ag land, whether it's ag homestead, ag non-homestead. There's 2A, 2B, or 2C, and if you own any of this property, you understand what those classifications are. One is rural vacant land, managed forest land, and production crop land. So it applies to all that. The only thing it doesn't apply to is a house garage 1 acre. That house garage 1 acre on the ag parcel is taxed the same as every other home in the community based on its value. We mentioned that the credit's due to increase from 60 to 70% for this upcoming tax year. It's an ongoing credit. It's automatically deducted from the tax bill, so you can actually see where the ag credit is on your tax bill if you have any of these properties. So you don't have to fill out a form. It's all automatic, and it's paid by the state. So the state generates revenue and through sales tax, income tax, so forth, and it's paid to the communities through the state general revenues. So what it doesn't do, unlike some other types of tax relief, it doesn't shift the burden from the ag property owners to residential or to commercial. So it doesn't shift that burden over to other categories of property. Instead, it shifts it directly to the state. I mentioned your ag land that qualifies for this credit is 40% in this district. So the ag credit at 70%, so the state is going to pay about 28% of the principal and interest payments over the term of these bonds and the remaining term of the existing bonds. So when we look at which type of property within this tax base, how much is being collected to support the bond taxes, we have the state payment over here in green, and it's at 30. It's actually probably 30, closer to 31%. So you're looking at around 28% through the ag credit. And then there's some other aid that we won't get into because it's only 3%, but there's some other aid called debt equalization aid that's amounting to about 3%, so it's going to bring it up to 31% that the state is going to pay. The remaining ag land and buildings on that ag land, that, the other 30%. In other words, we'll pick up 12% of the overall taxes on this. Your commercial businesses, industrial is 10%, and then the residential is going to be in the 40, kind of blurry, but what is that, 48%, something in that ballpark. So you can see the biggest piece is still going to be paid for residential, but a substantial piece of it will be paid by the state. So when we look at school districts' debt, there's different ways of structuring. You can structure it kind of like a typical loan, business loan that you might be familiar with, or a mortgage, where you have the same payment for a period of years. We can also look at it when we structure bonds and take into account what the existing bonds look like. And that's what we did in this case. It's called a wraparound structure. So essentially, when the district is levying a higher amount for existing bonds, we'll pay a lower amount on the new bonds, okay? And as the old bond, the payments drop, maybe some of those bonds are paid off, it frees up a little more room to pay a higher amount on the new bond. So it adjusts each particular year, and what it does, let's see, I think I have a picture of it. So if you look at this, this is a visual of that concept. This is the actual bond payment, the estimated bond payments converted to the tax rate. So your gray is your existing bond tax rate estimated out. And you can see that going back to page 21, it was quite high. It dropped a little bit in 22. And what we're doing then is the new bonds, the blue, they have smaller principal payments, while you still have a little higher payments on the old bonds. And then when these get paid off, then we're paying a larger portion of that. So that has the advantage of leveling off, making it very predictable with that tax rate on the debt services, debt service only. What that's going to be over a period of years, it helps the district manage the budget. It also takes advantage of future growth, because if you're having larger payments out in the future, you have this many years of growth. So if you have new businesses moving in, or new subdivisions coming in, new people moving in, they're going to contribute to the future debt to a little larger extent, so it allows your tax base to grow more, which the more it grows, the less the current residents are going to contribute over the 20-year bond period. So as far as the actual tax impact, we're using a $245,000 house to represent the average home value here. Question 1, the tax impact per year is about $80. On question 2, it's going to add another $29 for $109 per year. And I mentioned it was a 20-year. And then we have this chart. It shows, various home values, and it shows various business values. We also have a resource. It's linked to the district's website. So if you go out there under Referendum Information, there's a tax website or tax calculator. You can click on that link, and there's 2 calculators. One is for residential. You can just plug in your estimated market value, so it doesn't have to conform with this chart. You can put in any odd number in there, and it'll show you what our tax estimate is. There's one for businesses, so they can do that. As far as ag property, there isn't a tax calculator for that because all ag property varies. You get a parcel, you have house, garage, 1 acre on it, you have some ag homestead, you might have some ag non-homestead all on the same parcel. So there is a place on that tax website where you can plug in your parcels and hit submit, and it comes to our office, and we'll contact the county and get you an individualized estimate of the property tax increase. Now, in this particular case, now remember, we're comparing your taxes from taxes payable 22 on debt, this is debt, and what it will be the next year. Now remember, going from one year to the next, this is going to look a little bit odd because this is the tax impact from going to prior year to next year on taxes. Remember, the A credit is going from 60 to 70%, and it's on all debt, including existing. So what's actually this is showing is even with the passage of both questions on the ballot, the extra 10% A credit increase on all the debt, the existing debt, is actually going to result in farmers seeing a reduction in their property taxes pertaining to the school's bonding, even with the passage of question 1 or 2, because that A credit is growing. So again, this is a prior year to current year estimate of the tax impact. So that credit is really helping farmers a lot. Now, a couple questions I get is, well, is the A credit permanent? Can it go away? And nothing's permanent. It's in the law, so the legislators would actually have to change the law as opposed to just not fund it. It's a sum sufficient type of language, which means they have to fund it if it's in the law. It had bipartisan support when it passed. It still has bipartisan support, and there's never been a proposal introduced to eliminate it or reduce it. We have seen proposals to increase it. It would be very unpopular for any politician to try to get rid of it. So it has a very strong support, which would indicate that it's not likely to go away. The other question I get a lot is, well, my house was recessed. So, you know, these charts aren't helping me because my house went from, you know, $225,000 to $275,000 over the last couple of years. How it works, the districts is levying a certain amount, or the city is levying a certain amount, county is. So if we take a look and try to isolate just house value, if we assume that none of the taxes change, so we're kind of looking at it, trying to isolate what happens to your house value. So if your house value goes up by more than everyone else's, or more than what the entire tax base of the school district grows, then you're going to assume a larger share of the overall tax levy. So if your house is growing faster than all your neighbors in the whole neighborhood, you're going to assume more of the overall taxes. If your house value increases by less than what the entire tax base grows, you're going to assume a lesser tax burden, okay? So if you have businesses that move in, subdivisions that come in, and you get that extra value and more people in the community, they're going to offset some of this over the years because your tax base is going to grow, and it's likely to grow more if you have new development than just the value of your home. If you have stagnant growth, nothing happens, then it really all depends on how much your home value increases versus everyone else's, you know, in reassessment or market value. All right, one final chart on the A credit. So if we go back to before the A credit was in place, and these numbers are kind of blurry, so I wrote them down so I could see them. Back in 2017, before the A credit went into place on the debt for the school district, or on the $7,000 per acre average value, farmers per acre were paying about $10.16. Okay, then you can see the 40% A credit came in, so you can see how that was reduced down to $5.65 per acre. and this assumes 7,000 per acre for every year. I know it fluctuated. But the next year was still 40%, so you're at 551, and then they started bumping up to 50, 55, 60%. So it went to 453 per acre, 399, $3.20. Now out here, this is on the existing, the orange, and this is the impact of the proposed bond on the ballot. And combined, that's 289, and 289 again this year for everything. So you can see that ag credit has really driven down the taxes for ag property owners over the years.
So that's kind of the plan, you know, again, learn more. How can you learn more? You go to the website, you come to the information sessions like this. There's some frequently asked questions out there. We did a Facebook Live session that's floating around out there someplace. So with that, we're gonna open up and try to answer your questions.
You mentioned on the plumbing, they're gonna go from galvanized to copper. Is that because of the pressure, because of the boiler system, or why wouldn't you go to like a PEX or a?
So I don't think PEX is allowed in commercial buildings. Copper is the standard they use in commercial
Okay,
buildings.
all right.
And also from a life expectancy standpoint, copper is just, it's stronger.
Yeah, this one nobody steals it before it gets installed.
Right, right, yeah, right.
So Johnson Controls was the one that brought us up to with the addition in 2000. Are they
Correct.
still involved at all, or are they
No.
not even around, or?
No.
Okay.
They went through a major, so
They're gone.
they're still out there, but on a different level.
Okay.
And so we actually work with a different firm with some of our controlling and that kind of stuff. I can't even tell you the name of it, but yeah. And I think a few of the people that work for Nexus work for Johnson Controls.
It's true.
Was the boiler relined back in 2000? I mean, what did we do in 2000 when we did the additions? I thought we did something with the
So
boiler
we
to
took
extend the
the old
life.
boiler out.
We took the boiler out.
The old boiler that was down on this end of the building.
Yep.
Was taken out.
Okay.
And we have actually 4 smaller boilers that work in parallel.
So we did take it out. See, I couldn't remember. I thought I know there was talk of redoing it or getting it to extend its life.
So that room is storage right now, but the boiler actually did come out.
Okay.
The chimney is still there, but the chimney will be removed as part of this project.
Okay.
But the heating and cooling all comes from this end of the building down there through the boiler system.
Okay.
So what happened with Johnson Controls?
What happened to Johnson Controls?
There's 2 main ones, Johnson and Andover.
Yeah, and we actually use, we don't use a firm to do the things that they did. We use some other smaller firms, I will say, to address some of those needs we have in the district.
Proprietary software?
Yes,
That's not good.
I think so.
Well, so as we go through, when we go through the bidding process, you know, our specifications are to be open. So we'll have an open front end, and then we'll have, I mean, legally, we have to give everybody the opportunity to bid.
Right.
But they have to conform to a certain open architecture if they want to participate. And so to your point, I agree. I mean, having anything that's proprietary is not good for the long-term
And you can
spend.
put that in the spec.
And that's what we'll do, yeah.
Your comment about indoor air handler, you're wrong. An indoor air handler taken care of should be good for 60, 65 years.
Yep.
Not 30% more versus an outside. So, anyway, I kind of, are you done?
Yeah.
I spent some time with Jeremy this afternoon, and for Ron's sake and the board's sake, I gave him 13 points of conversation, and they all didn't have to do with this referendum. There are other issues that I wanted to see. And I'm gonna go backwards from the way I approached it with Jeremy. I'm gonna start out by saying it's really easy to tear apart, scrutinize referendums. and what are needs versus the bigger issues. What are the wants versus the needs. But here, I believe in this referendum issue, the biggest issue is transparency, communications, and accountability. Now, who's in charge and how do referendums of this size come about in just a short period of time? Who's responsible for taking care of our facilities, and why aren't they being taken care of? And Jeremy and I talked this afternoon, this thing's been up here for 4 or 5 months at least.
4 or 5 years.
And everybody should, every facility should have a box of ceiling tile. This is a place where people come and look. And it's like, you ought to be ashamed of this as a board. You come in here to have board meetings, people coming in here, look, that's shameful. So who's being accountable for this kind of stuff, and what's the plan going forward so that we don't end up with stuff like this with some of the issues that are in here? And Jeremy talked a little bit about a facilities director, but I'm really saddened when I see all this stuff that had to come to this, that you don't have some maintenance to take care of. Roofs could be taken care of. I took care of roofs for a long time. We didn't have this kind of stuff at Mayo very often. When we did, we fixed it. Bad water, this water issue. I had a person come and tell me, he's pretty credible, that water was that way back in 2008. And I'm thinking, why are you as a board, I wish the whole board was here, why are you as a board, and Ron, you're a tenured member, allowing the water pipes to be that bad for the students in our district? I think our communities of Dover, Yoda, and the rural have been very good to the school system about referendums and supporting the schools. But some of this stuff, there's no excuse for. So I'm gonna go to another one. This has to do with the board nexus. By the way, I told Jeremy, and I'm not afraid to say it, I was not impressed with Nexus being on the strategic plan committee. But I assume this thing just came in the mail, right? So it just came, who put it together? I assume Nexus put it together, and I assume the board approved it, and it was sent out. So I assume you all read it, and you thought it was all right. So my comments have 2 very important comments about the 2 questions. Question 1 has some stuff in there that could have been on question 2. But you look at question 2, elementary school. So question 2 can't pass unless question 1 does, right?
Right.
So question 2 under elementary school says, repair worn roof and leaky classroom windows. I talked to some of the janitors, they talked about how the water leaks through the windows, and the teachers have to put towels there. Well, if water's leaking in the windows, it's finding cracks and going in the walls. And we all know what happens when it goes in the walls. That's mold and bacteria. And the second thing is, so worn roof, leaky classroom windows. In our most vulnerable students, our elementary kids. Replace cafeteria doors with double fire rated doors. That's code. I don't know why you guys didn't replace them before. But those 2 items, a code issue and vulnerability to our small students, should have been in question 1. Because what are you gonna do if question 2 doesn't pass? Or is this a board and Nexus bait trick to say, well, they're gonna see this, so we're gonna put it in question 2, then they'll vote question 2 through. So where are your priorities? If you read and approved this, what was your thinking to put these 2 things in 2 instead of 1?
I could tell, we looked at a 1-question ballot. It was recommended we come forward with 2 because of the tax tolerance. Those 2 items can be addressed with LTFM funds. And we have LTFM funds that we generate every year in the district. So if those don't get passed with this bond referendum, we can still have funds to address. It doesn't take much to they actually come in and they took 2 windows out, and they found out that there's probably some flashing differences that weren't put in correctly to start with. It's not a big project. We can reuse the same windows, we can upgrade windows, we have some options to do there. Just depends on when we get the
Why are we
bids.
throwing them on a bond issue, referendum?
Because they're part of this whole plan, and we are going to use,
So you have some,
so we are using the LTF funds that we have in in our coffers now as part of this project.
Just lowering the bond request.
Exactly.
overall.
So this is the bond request, and then there's the total project cost. And we're using some of that money that we have, that was set aside for these type of projects. The problem we had as a board was, so you come in and you start tearing something apart, but you can't tear it apart and just fix part of it. It makes more sense to come in, if you're gonna tear the flooring out, take the asbestos hockey pucks off the ceiling tiles and fix the ceiling, and put the new lights in, and do the project all at once. We only get increments of financing for LTF funds every year. And we could do, you could do the flooring one year, we could do the lighting one year, and those type of projects. We're gonna use that funds to do this all as one project.
but it doesn't say nothing about the LTF funds here.
The literature does not address LTM funding for part of this project, does it? Or does it?
It does not.
Okay.
So, transparency,
Yep.
accountability, that's what I'm looking for. It's like, I haven't, for the first time, I haven't seen that come out in this issue. And there's a lot of other things I could go about, there's just the way that come about. To know that the very first time I became aware of this referendum, I was sitting in the Viola Gopher Count parade, and the staff come around and handed this out. I think the people deserve better than that.
Well, we've talked about it at board meetings, we've had public meetings.
So, is the quality of the board diminished that I don't understand, why would you, before you didn't notify the citizens of Dover Yoder School District, you would hand this out at a public parade that's got Rochester, Plainview, people from all over southeastern Minnesota. I just thought that was a cheap shot,
If I may, so from a referendum standpoint, legally, the board has to pass a resolution to go to a referendum 74 days prior to the election date. And so with the facility task force, and did you participate in the survey that went to your home?
Yes. And talk about surveys, we only got one survey.
Sure, and I think it states in the document that you could contact the district office for additional copies or take it online if you'd like. And so from a community standpoint, we moved pretty well from a notification of the community versus what typically happens with the public in most other communities. And so that 74 days prior, the resolution happened, we also had a review and comment document that had to go and basically be approved by the board 90 days prior. And so from a survey perspective, you saw it at home, you saw the variety of issues that we were facing, the request from a tax tolerance perspective, and there were also some questions in there that asked the public about, how do you feel about the school board? How do you feel about the financial state of the school board? All of that. And so from a communication perspective, when that survey went out in March, with all of that information, that typically is when the public is first engaged. And when we did it in March, that's typically earlier than many districts do. So I respectfully, would suggest that, this board with the due diligence that they did, the administration, but also the community engagement part was really all Nexus did was help facilitate conversation. It's not for Nexus to dictate to the community, to the board, what you should and should not do. It was for us to do our facility assessment and also then look at the strategic plan based on what the community indicated they wanted, pull those together and say, how do you want to proceed? We talked to students, teachers and staff, the community, and then provided all that information. The facility task force frankly did at the end, delivered that presentation to the school board, and then the school board said, given this information, this is how we want to proceed. And as far as the two questions came from the facility task force because of the feedback from the survey. And so, again, respectfully, I understand your passion. Everybody, there should always be transparency, always. But I also think that the process by which we followed and the engagement of, quite literally, everybody in the community as far as the survey goes, and then dozens and dozens of folks with this facility task force, and all the teachers and staff. I think the district should be proud.
I sat on the strategic plan task force, and I looked around, I think we had, I can't remember, 5 or 6 tables on that task force.
Yeah.
There's about 3 citizens on each table, the rest were staff, administration, teachers, or students. And the timing of it was that, and they were working on the SOAR. And I said, God, I shouldn't get tangled up in the referendum, but they had a 1-page thing with SOAR. I said, doesn't blend. And of course, I was an outsider. I wasn't the teacher, I was administration. It almost was like they had a plan in place. And I think it was a few days after the last strategic plan, we get the survey in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
So the survey had to be planned before the strategic facility plan had to be done.
And please keep in mind, and you're absolutely right, both of those were happening in parallel. The struggle that we had, and I'm glad you brought this up from a transparency perspective, is that, when we started talking with the district back in 2019, shortly after the board started talking about all the different things that they were looking to address, and then COVID hit, and then even in 21, there were still COVID struggles. And so it would have been wonderful, and the plan was to start the strategic planning process much earlier. It's just the district couldn't. You couldn't get people together, which was a challenge. And so with the strategic plan and the facility plan, as they came together, we had the information that, frankly, both are generally independent of each other. Where the facility plan benefits from the strategic plan is if the public says facilities are critical to us. And so we were able to leverage some of those voices in ultimately what was pulled together. So I totally agree with you. Transparency is absolutely critical. But I do think with COVID and how your community engaged the overall process was really humbly, top notch. And this is what I do. I work with a lot of different school districts in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and given all the struggles that we've had locally, I really think they did a nice job.
I don't think so. I was a mayor here for a long time, and I looked, I'm not the mayor now. Through COVID, the city operated just fine. They sent out their newsletter, their letter, all their information, kept us people, even though COVID was going on, what was going on. The school, they got their paper, but they don't talk anything about any of this stuff in the school newspaper. It's not in there. And so that's what makes me most upset about this board, this referendum. No transparency, no accountability. It's like, we're gonna feed this fast on you and get this thing passed, and we're one big happy family here. That's what bothers me.
So I will show you the proposal that
You had the opportunity to communicate, and you didn't do it.
I'm gonna beg to differ that there wasn't information sent out for the community. Either through the school newsletter, we talked about the meetings coming up, through emails and that kind of stuff.
Through emails, not usual.
So, with the project that came forward, the recommendation looked a lot different than the one we're presenting to you. The focus of the board was to address three major issues that we're addressing. The 1960s building, the infrastructure, the heating and cooling, the water, or CTE area, okay? The original plan had a lot more to do with, they wanted to re-rough the whole elementary, they wanted to put another room on the elementary, and the focus of the board was gonna be, the biggest need we have in this district is in this building. We're gonna address one building at a time, we're gonna take it one piece at a time. You know, we could have tried to roll it into one big package and done both projects at twice the amount, but we also are very cognizant of the tax tolerance of our community. So let's do one building right, let's get the infrastructure fixed in this, let's put a couple more classrooms on the end of this, so we can have teachers not working on carts. And let's improve that CTE area that needs to be improved, so we can provide a better opportunity for our students. And by the way, we're gonna make our entrance safety entrance better, okay? We're gonna get this building right. It's not to say that we won't be back at some point in the future to address other needs within the district. But let's do it in steps and not chunks. That was kind of the discussion the board had. And we pared this thing down. We focused more stuff on this building and not spreading it across the whole district.
I understand that, but during that process, nobody else knew about it. Just the board.
We have public meetings.
I wanted to hit on one thing, Wes. We talked about this afternoon. You already know my answer, what it's gonna be, because I already told you today. Who's in charge of the building? Going forward, I'm in charge of the building. And the school administration's in charge of the building. The school board hired us to run this place. And it is a new administration coming in. And this isn't gonna fly. This is low expectations. I agree with you 100%. I told you that today. There is no reason that those aren't replaced throughout the school. And that is not going to fly going forward. That is low expectations. You're absolutely right. There should be a case of those somewhere. And as that happens, it's taken care of. It's noted, it's recorded. But going forward, I am in charge. And the responsibility will fall on my shoulders, and we talked about that. And it's a big responsibility, but it's a task I'm up for. The school board is not in charge of ceiling tiles. They hired us to do that. So, you know, I don't hold them accountable. It's me going forward. So if those things aren't taken care of.
We had a good conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm always dressing Ron, I wish the rest of the board was here. How can you have meetings here and look at that and leave it? And so what's that saying about the care of everything else? That's my point.
Yep, and fair enough.
And if we got that kind of a problem, how do I know as a taxpayer who's gonna pay a pretty good chunk of money because of my value of my house, that our building's gonna get taken care of? The roof should be, inspected.
We do.
Now, pretty soon you're on the old building, you're gonna need to start doing some tuck pointing.
It is part of this project. Correct. Yep.
I didn't see that in here.
Yeah, it's part of the project.
There's communications. Doesn't say tuck pointing. That's what I'm talking about. So I guess.
Okay. Other questions? Comments? I would thank you all for coming, and if you have more questions,
Building tour?
anybody wants to go through the building, or we'll offer a tour.
Not everybody jump up at once.
Just a question about where the band room is expanding. Does that, go into the wrestling practice room any further?
No, the footprint of the band room will stay the same. They're taking out what was offices and practice rooms, and that's why the addition goes to the side for more offices, or for practice rooms and
Courtyard or
storage.
something, isn't it?
It goes into
Where
the
the
court,
orchard is.
Yeah,
into the
it's not
courtyard.
touching the wrestling. That's out there though, I've heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard that rumor or
That
whatever, that the wrestling room.
They're taking
That's
the
not
part of the
accurate.
wrestling
Yeah,
room.
and that's what it looks like on that picture, that's what I was gonna ask, I wanted to clarify that too.
I'll bring that back up again.
The choir room was butts up against the wrestling room on that back side. And nowhere in any documents does it say the choir room is changing. But
And I think, doesn't the band or the choir take the wrestling room at times and they can't practice?
That I don't know.
The wrestling's, don't they use them for wrestling? Yeah, so that.
Mr. Anderson, if a practice room is being used, and say he's got some kids who are doing makeup lessons, they might go into the multipurpose room to kind of warm up, but not do a lesson in there.
Right.
If you want, Wes, I can show you
Walk down there.
that area of the band that we're talking about, and show you that the choir room is butted up against that wall.
I was concerned we got a really good wrestling program.
Yeah, we do.
We don't wanna cheat them out of
No,
their space.
that space won't get, other than maybe updating the chiller that is outside the building as part of that. Yep. Okay. Tour, line up.
That's it.